Why is it so difficult to say upon us? It's just too many vowels that sound the same. Gift giving season is here. Yes, good save. And if you're watching this video, it's probably because someone in your life asked you, a knitter, what you want for Christmas, and you thought, I can't very well trust them to give me the right yarn, or I have something super specific in mind, but they want to give me something knitting related. What can I ask for? Or you're on the other side and you are that person who wants to give someone who is a knitter something knitting related. So over the last year, I have borrowed different books from my local library that are knitting related, and I've written down my thoughts about them. I'm going to try and keep it sort of short and sweet so you can make up your own mind. I have 8 books here that I want to go through. I have borrowed all of them except one, and that I'll save for last because that's also the one that I want. So in no particular order, I wanted to start with the Nordic Knitting Primer by Kristin Drysdale. This is a book that is very much leaning into Kristin Drysdale's Nordic heritage. I think she said that on her, I don't know which side she is on what, but she has great grandparents from Denmark and from Norway, and she spent some time in Norway studying, I think, and really fell in love with the country and the tradition. So this is Nordic knitting through a North American lens. For me, as a Scandinavian myself, I am from Sweden. I've lived in Sweden basically my entire life. These patterns, they feel a bit same. When I got this from the library, I was very excited because I had seen the individual pattern pictures and I thought that they in isolation looked very beautiful. But looking at them together, I thought they sort of swam together and mushed into one big Scandinavian-ish pattern. So I think this book is more aesthetic than useful. I was intending to knit something from the book. I borrowed it with the express intention of knitting something, and I went through page after page after page looking for something that sparked my interest. Normally in a knitting book, my problem is rather that I want to knit all of the things, and here I just didn't feel any of the patterns calling my name. I think that what I could go for is the slippers. I think there are 2 pairs and one of them I thought was sort of cute, but none of the bigger projects were really calling my name, and they are very beautiful but sort of in a detached way. I can't really explain it. The patterns seem to be well written. There seems to be a variety in patterns, both in the complexity of it and also in what kind of project you get, if it's for a child or an adult, and if it's more masculine or feminine leaning. I think there is something for a lot of people, but you have to want that aesthetic. When I browse Ravelry pages, I go through first the pattern makers pictures, and then I go to projects to see what other people made with the same basic idea but with different yarn combinations, colour combinations, and if they did any modifications, and that can sort of pique my interest even more in a pattern. But you only get the pictures that Kristin Drysdale had room for in her book. I think that all of the pictures are edited in the same way and therefore have the same values, and that makes them sort of blend into one another for me. I want more visual difference. So it is beautiful but sort of detached. And as a Scandinavian myself, or half Scandinavian, I'm half German as well, the patterns don't invoke that nostalgia that someone who is going back to their roots or their heritage would feel from these patterns. So I definitely think that this is for a North American audience, and her patterns are this popular for a reason. So if that someone is the person you're gifting to, go for it. I don't have a yarn recommendation to go with this because there are so many different patterns and constructions and thicknesses and gauges. So I don't think that any one yarn could be a good companion to this book. This next book is one that I have actually knitted from Knitting Lotta or Lotta Lundin Designs, and her book Sticka vantar, Knit Mittens. She is the uncrowned queen of mittens. I love her stuff. She has a basic mitten design. She has 2 or 3 different thumb options, I think. One that is a bit easier and one that is more advanced. And she makes incredibly thoughtful and funny and beautiful mitten designs within these very strict parameters. So she knits on a 2.5mm needle most of the time. She uses a fingering weight or light fingering weight yarn most of the time, and she uses 2 colours that she switches between. In a few patterns she throws in a third, but you only ever just go between 2 colours. So the rows where you have the new colour, you drop one of the previous ones to just work with 2 colours at the same time. Her view on designing, I think, is really funny because she takes pop culture references and turns them into mittens. So she has Elvis Presley, she has Bruce Springsteen in this book. She also has more just patterns or figures. So she has a lemon pattern, the juicy fruit mitten, which I've knit 1 1/4 times. She has a monstera leaf and flamingos. I just love her designs. I think they are so funny, and the instructions are very easy to follow. These instructions are in Swedish in the book. I don't think the book comes in English. Let me check that. The book actually does come in English. I didn't know. I thought it was only in Swedish, and I was so sad that I had to give you such a strong recommendation about a book that wasn't available in the language that most of you speak. But the book is called Whole Lotta Mittens. So funny. And I highly recommend it. The book is funny. It's clear. I think it's 18 patterns. And it's easy to follow. She has an intro where she goes through some of the techniques, and then you go to the patterns and you can refer back to the technique portion whenever you need it. So if I hadn't been clear enough, I definitely recommend this book. I think this would be a great gift for someone who is a more experienced colourwork knitter or a confident beginner. So these patterns, they aren't repetitive. You have to keep track of every row to know what you're doing, because the pattern isn't repeating that often that you can actually just read your own knitting. So you do have to be confident with knitting in the round and doing colourwork knitting with a smaller needle size, but it is a very engaging knit. And I also want to highlight her customer service, because when I was knitting the Juicy Fruit mittens the first time around, I accidentally left part of the pattern at home when I wanted to work on it. I think I was travelling, so I had brought my knitting and I had just had the thumb left. So I actually wrote to her on Instagram to ask her if she could send me just the thumb of the pattern, and she did. She responded very quickly and she asked me, okay, what exactly do you need? Do you need more than the thumb, or is it just the thumb? So she was very helpful, and I met her at one of the yarn fairs in Stockholm as well, and she was selling her patterns. That's where I found the lemon patterns, and she was just lovely. I really liked her patterns, and I definitely have plans to knit more of her mittens in the future. I am currently knitting Juicy Fruits again, however, because the first time around I knit them in a superwash treated and nylon mix sock yarn, and that was just too thin. It didn't bloom and the unevenness didn't really block out. So now I'm reknitting it because I love the mittens. I just want them to be warmer. So I'm reknitting them in Rauma Fin Ull, and I think these are going to work out even more beautiful. Look through the book and see if you can figure out what pattern the person would be most drawn to, and give them some Rauma Fin Ull in the colours that they would need for the pattern, because the Rauma Fin Ull is very thin, as fin ull means, so thin wool, but it's quite warm and it will fill out the stitches quite beautifully. So definitely don't go for a superwash treated yarn for this, would be my recommendation. On to the next book that I've actually knitted something from. This is the Joyful Colourwork Socks by Charlotte Stone. She has 2 books. The first one is a hard recommendation from me. I knit a pair of... How convenient! I had actually not planned this, but I am actually wearing my Melodrama socks. Oh shoot, did I break my chair? The subtitle for this is 25 new knitting patterns for fun and whimsical footwear, and they really are whimsical. I chose the Melodrama socks to knit a pair of Palestine socks, and I have a few of the patterns saved in my mental library to knit at a later time, because I would love to knit the Don't Bug Me with the ladybugs, the Groove is in the Heart that I'm thinking about knitting for Valentine's. There's also a St. Patrick's pattern that I think is also quite spring appropriate. And the Melodrama socks I really like knitting. I took the colourwork chart that was originally just supposed to be in 2 places, but I loved it so much that I knit it over the entire foot. So what I did was to just adapt her basic charts, because they are usually quite repetitive. They are short and impactful. So and I also want to knit I don't know if they're called the Happy Hour socks, but that is, it's martini glasses and it's so cute. I want to make those. But the pattern repeats are quite short and easy to follow and easy to memorize, and you can then read back your own knitting to see how the stitches should go. So there are 25 patterns in this book. I found more than a handful. I had to really lock in with one of the patterns, and I wanted to knit others. And she has categorized her patterns in different chapters, so outdoor life or beverages or holidays, and it's an all year round appropriate book. It's not just for the winter season, so definitely recommend this book. The patterns, they come in 2 to 3 sizes, and they are adaptable to a degree, so you can make the patterns a bit bigger or a bit smaller depending on your gauge and your needle size and your yarn choices, but you're not going to be able to do a whole lot of range for the socks. So I would recommend you giving this or asking for this book. And if you are giving someone this book and you know that they want to get into colourwork sock knitting, I would go to your local yarn store and ask the staff there for recommendations for single colour sock yarn, because if you use a sock yarn that is too heavily patterned or that changes colours too often, it can mess up and confuse the patterns. So for my socks, for example, I did a unicolor black, a unicolor red and a unicolor green with no variegation. Of course, there are patterns that would benefit from having some colour shifting elements to it, but for the most part I would stick to unicolor sock yarn, ask for recommendations and listen to them. So the Joyful Colourwork Socks is Charlotte Stone's second book. The first one was Charming Colourwork Socks, which I also borrowed after borrowing the Joyful Colourwork Socks, and I have to say that I can really tell that Charlotte Stone hadn't really come into her own just yet with the Charming Colourwork socks, because they are not as distinctly her style. The Joyful Colourwork socks are more what I have come to expect from her patterns. They are funny and they are very crisp. And in the Charming Colourwork socks, I was also flicking through the pages looking for a pattern to really wow me. And I think I found one or two. The bats, I think, are in the Charming Colourwork socks, and those are definitely on my to knit list. But I don't think that there were any other patterns that really spoke to me in the Charming Colourwork. So definitely go for the Joyful rather than the Charming if you have the choice and if you are looking for a recommendation. Next up is the Magical Woodland Knits by Claire Garland. And the Magical Woodland is exactly what this is. They are adorable. These are plushies or knit stuffed animals that are so lifelike. They are incredible. I nearly got teary-eyed looking at the pictures of the patterns, and I wanted to knit all of them. They look surreal to make out of just a string and 2 sticks. I am in awe of Claire Garland's work. I have one of her later patterns, the Frog and Toad, and I want to knit a toad for someone. I haven't decided yet who is going to get it. I might just keep it for myself, but you can knit tiny outfits for the frog, and she has a bunch of accessories for the frog. She also has some other knitted plushies that come with outfits too. So there is a kitten in a dragon costume, and I think the kitten also has a frog costume. That isn't in this book, however. So back to the book. The patterns, they are quite advanced. They are fiddly. You can, of course, use a thicker yarn and thicker needles to not have to fiddle with the itty bitty tiniest. But I wouldn't give this to someone who is a complete beginner at knitting. So if you give this book to someone who's never knitted before or who is just starting out, chances are they're going to look at it and be overwhelmed and think that knitting is just way too difficult and just give it up. And I would hate for that to happen. So steer clear of this for the very beginners. But if someone is a bit more experienced and they are doing sort of kooky things, definitely give them this book. It is adorable, and I think someone would be very happy to have this, even if it's just as a coffee book that never gets used for the actual patterns. The book is just beautiful. Claire Garland has a cult following. She allows you to sell from her patterns. Most pattern designers say that these are for private use only. You are not allowed to sell things that you've made out of these patterns because the pattern is their intellectual property, but she allows you to sell from these patterns, and she has an Instagram page to sell these patterns and the accessories that come with them for people who just want the very cute and sweet knits without knitting them themselves. This I would also not have a yarn recommendation with, because the yarn is going to be quite specific for the different patterns, and since there is such a range of patterns and colorways, I would just not give them a yarn in accompaniment to the book. I want to give a quick shout out to the book Protest Knits by Geraldine Warner. This is a book with 5 patterns that are very 2017 coded. It's the pussy hat, it is the little uterus dude, it is a protest balaclava with a beard to sort of shield your face and make you unidentifiable for the protest marches back in 2017, 2016 and 17. The patterns are not very sophisticated. I would love for there to be a 2.0 version with a Watermelon for Gaza. I would like an All Eyes on Sudan, No Kings, Release the Files, that sort of pattern roundup in a book format. That would be very funny. This book is also the only one in this list that isn't available on Amazon, which I applaud. So good on her. Next up is the 52 Weeks of Socks. This is what kicked off this entire process of book borrowing and reviewing for me last year. I borrowed the 52 Weeks of Socks and just found so many beautiful socks. I was in a phase where I didn't have the mental capacity to learn new sock constructions, so I made a mental note of I'll have to get back to this, and I still haven't, but I will, because this book has a lot of different constructions as well. It's a toe up, cuff down, different heel constructions, different toe decreases, different textures. So there is very little, if any, colour work in this book, but it's more textures, and I found some of them to be just so lovely and I want to try them. The only caveat that I have is that a lot of these socks only come in one size. So the pattern is so intricate that the designer couldn't fit more than one size description on the 2 or 3 pages that they were given in the book. And I went to the Ravelry page of some of them and saw that they didn't have additional sizes there either, so you would have to faff around with different gauges and yarn thicknesses to make sure that the sock fits you. But if the person you're giving to has a foot size between a European 38 and 40 or 37, 39, I think that they would fall well into the range of this book. Any smaller or larger than this, I don't think you would get a lot of use out of the book except for inspiration. But if you want to knit from the book, you don't need it for inspiration. It is a beautiful book, so I would also enjoy it as a coffee book. The copy that I got from the library had been quite used and abused, so it wasn't very beautiful anymore. But I can see that the book, if it's given in a new format or a lightly used format, is a beautiful piece in and of itself. With this, you could also give the person a unicolor sock yarn. I would go for a light fingering weight yarn in a solid color. So for example, the Filcolana Aweta, that is a merino and nylon mix, or an alpaca mix, or something that feels quite luxe. As long as it's thin enough and unicolor enough, because if it's even the slightest bit of speckled, it will muddle the textures. Colourwork knitting, it is easier to get away with a bit of variegation, but with texture knits, you want the yarn to be a flat colour and not too dark, so the light can catch and you can see the different textures of the yarn without being confused by speckles or shifts in colour in the yarn. And on to the last book for the day. I feel like I've talked forever, but books, man, it's just such a good topic to talk about, and knitting, and then marry the two, I'll go yapping forever. The last book is the Knitting for Olive pattern book. It's called Knitting for Olive Classic Timeless Knitting Patterns. Discover 20 stunning timeless knitting patterns from cult Scandinavian brand Knitting for Olive. And yes, they are popular for a reason, and since the pattern designers are actually first generation Scandinavians, the patterns are more contemporary than, for example, the Nordic knitting primer, and they have that minimalistic Scandi aesthetic that a lot of people really like, me included. I feel like I have one side of me that is very Scandi minimalist, and then I have another part of me that wants to wear watermelon socks and no one can stop me, and have pink and green hair. So the book was released in 2023, which means that a lot of the patterns are actually quite recent. They are some of the most well-loved knitting patterns from Knitting for Olive. And for example, last summer, or this summer, when I was looking at knitting a camisole, I was umming and ahhing between the Chrysler top and the camisole number 4. I went for the camisole number 4, but the Chrysler top is really beautiful as well. The Darling wrap top, for example, and there is the Carl Johan turtleneck sweater that I'm really keen on knitting as well. So this book I haven't been able to get my hands on yet because there's always people ahead of me in line. At the moment there are 2 people ahead of me in line to borrow it, so I can't say that I recommend it or not, but Knitting for Olive patterns are very popular and I think that this is a good book and I want this book. So do with that information what you want, but out of all of the books that I have right here, the 2 books that I would want to be gifted myself would be the Joyful Colourwork socks from Charlotte Stone, because they are just such a palette cleanser. They are so funny and so sweet and so varied. And the Knitting for Olive book, because those are larger wearable pieces, garments that are very customizable in the yarn combination, color combination that you use. And I think I could create a lot of staples and statement pieces. So the entire range between the neutral Scandinavian basics to big, poofy, fun, loud projects. With this pattern book, I wouldn't recommend you giving someone yarn because all of the patterns require different yarn weights and you would want to go for different colours. There isn't one correct colour or one correct yarn for this. Knitting for Olive yarn is also loved for a reason. I have knit with the pure silk, the merino, the thin merino and the soft silk mohair, and I really enjoyed all of them. The silk I am definitely going back to. I want to knit myself a long sleeved t-shirt, so an undershirt basically with the silk. The soft silk mohair it fluffs and it's quite itchy in my eyes and nose, but that's because I have an allergy. And the merino was just very pleasant to work with and I liked the colour selections. I made a baby blanket with it and I'm very happy with how it turned out. So someone getting this book would also love a quantity of Knitting for Olive yarn, but you would need to know exactly what project they are working on, which colour they want, which quantity they need. So best bet for all of these books is giving them the book and a gift card to your local yarn store. Don't give people an Amazon gift card or a gift card to a faceless, huge corporation. Give them a gift card to your local yarn store that is brick and mortar, because we need the yarn stores to survive. We need to go there to be able to get help. We need to go there to be able to feel the different fibers and compare colors and look at them in natural lighting and fluorescent lighting, and we need to have the yarn stores. So keep them alive, give people something from a yarn store, buy needles there, buy your patterns there, buy your yarn there, give them a gift card and a book, and you will be very popular on Christmas Day. So what is your relationship to knitting books? Do you have them? Do you use them? Do you want them? Do you like them? Have you read and used any of the books that I have talked about today? Let me know in the comments down below. If you liked the video, please remember to like it. If you want to, please click the subscribe button. And if you want to, click right here and that will take you to the playlist of all of my Vlogmas 2025 videos. Thank you for watching. Take care. Bye.